Good morning. I'm Natalie. Good to be here with you guys today. Like, really good. I've been thinking about this for a while, and honestly, I've been dreaming about and thinking that I would be presenting at this conference one day. I actually thought I'd be presenting on leadership or culture, maybe the work that I do in the community. But as He does, God laid different plans for me, and I'm talking to you about grief today. You see, in May of this year, we lost my mom. My mother was, she passed away on May 21st with pancreatic cancer. She was diagnosed in August, so we just had about 9 months to journey through that. And my mother was the mother of all mothers. She was kind. She was actually caring. She gave so much to the community around her and to our family. So as a family, we've been spending a lot of time together, working through this. It's just been about 3 months, and really adjusting to this new normal for ourselves. And I think we're doing okay. I think we're doing okay with it all today. So the other thing that happened through this experience is that I've realized I've become kind of hypersensitive to the fact that we all experience death, and we'll all experience loss. And after my mom died, I just had a different feeling when I encountered people who also lost loved ones. Just a few days after my mom passed, another friend's mother passed. I thought about my coworker who's here today who had lost her father just a year or so ago. And I had a new bond with all of these people, as many of you might too. So it would help me to know, and I can hardly see you out there, but it would help me to know who else here today would consider yourself to be on a grief journey. Anybody give me a wave? A grief journey can be any part of the journey at all. Well, good. Certainly not alone. We're all in this together, aren't we? So my walk through grief has looked a little bit like this summer. I have literally been walking myself through grief. I like to walk. That's how I exercise. And so I've been on lots of long walks at our lake, at the bike trails in our neighborhood. I've been spending, honestly, a lot of time with my puppy, just a lot more time by myself, just reflecting on this whole experience, trying to do all the healthy things, right? Read the resources that people have given me. And honestly, spending a lot of time with my dad and my siblings because they've had the same type of loss as me of my mom. We've actually been talking a lot more, and it's brought us together in a new way. So there are positives in this journey, but I've realized some things, even just this summer, in these last few months. I've realized that I will never be the same again. I am a different person now. I've learned so much about what it feels like to lose someone personally and close to you, somebody that's truly just a part of your world, a close part of your world. And I've been thinking a lot about it too, and I think that through this, we can probably do grief a little better. It's not something we talk about, and why don't we talk about it? It's everywhere. It's just as common as birth in our lives. So let's get better at grief. So the approach I took, and I tend to be a little like this. I like to study things, learn things, and get really good at things. So here's me being better at grief. I wanted to understand what grief is. I wanted to learn more about how other people are grieving because I'm just one experience. And then what I'm hoping we can do together here today as we talk about this stuff is just adjust our grief game a little bit and be a little different when we encounter grievers. So first off, understanding grief. And we don't have nearly enough time to unpack this topic. Those of you who know it personally know that. But we'll give the basics here today. I personally recently experienced the loss of a loved one, but other types of life events can trigger the grieving process. Pregnancy loss is something that I know is very common and not always recognized as something that a person should grieve, but it should. Serious illness, relationship breakups, even business failures and major financial loss can lead a person to feel these grieving feelings. Grief affects all of us from top to bottom, inside out. It's emotional, social, physical, spiritual, and mental. Everything about you is affected by grief. Everything. So no part of you is untouched. And how does it actually show up? It shows up through thoughts, through feelings, and through actions. So it was good as I started to dig some of this information up. I actually started to feel a little more normal in my grief journey. Because if grief affects all of us, every single part of us, it can be very, very overwhelming and very hard. The other thing that made me feel a little more normal is starting to follow a number of Instagram accounts about grief and see that I'm not the only one feeling this way. So this one asked, what surprised you most about grief? And it said the physicality of it. Like, it feels like something. You can be really, really tired. You could be really, really, lots of things. Anxiety over performing an everyday task. One of the things that I thought of on this one was I'm usually very good at planning meals at our house. I do all the meal planning, cooking, shopping, all that kind of stuff. Lately, I don't care. I just don't care. So my husband's picking up the weight on that. Brain fog, absolutely. And finally, how ill-equipped most people are to support grievers. So that's why we're here today. How long does grief last? This too, I thought, well, there's probably no right answer, but there is some science to it. Some researchers tell us that our grief may experience improvements in grief, in the symptoms of grief after about 6 months, but they largely resolve in 1 to 2 years. And that's healthy grief. That's, average. It can be any range of things beyond that. And finally, looking at the timeline, oftentimes the grief can be stronger in the beginning and then kind of wane over time. Those highs and lows may come with certain triggers, but they may kind of not be so high and not be so low and so constant. So that's a little bit about grief education. All right, so the second part of my study was really to kind of verify some of the feelings that I have had about grief and the experiences that I have had to, again, see, like, am I normal? Am I doing okay? By talking to other people. So what I did was write a survey, just 5 questions, and I put it out on LinkedIn and Facebook. And I know some of you in the room actually took the survey, and I really, really appreciate that. Because I got 65 responses. I thought maybe I'd get like 12 or 15. So this was more than what I expected, but it was amazing. And I got such good input, and really a lot of themes came out. A lot of themes emerged so that I knew not only was I feeling this way, others feel this way too. So the first thing I asked this group of participants in the survey was, what is helpful as you're going through the grief journey? And so here are a few of the themes that emerged on what is helpful. The first one is, say their name. Like, there's no sweeter sound to me right now in my life than Bonnie. That's my mom. And I feel like I could hear it from across the room, like if I'm with her sisters or my siblings and somebody mentions mom or Bonnie, I'm like, what'd you say? Tell me more. And it's just heartwarming to hear her name and to hear about her. One of our survey participants agreed and said, I love when people tell me a memory or tell me something that reminded them of my mom or dad. I love to talk about my loved ones, completely. And even though this is something that feels good to grievers, it's not always easy for someone to approach. And so I thought this was a good Instagram post that said, here are a few questions that we could ask grievers to kind of prompt some conversation. What was your loved one like? What's a funny memory of them? And how do you honor them? Nothing feels better than hearing their name. Another theme from this what to do for grievers is tokens of remembrance. Things like photo gifts, Christmas ornaments, something of that person's, planting a tree or having like a physical place to go and honor that individual is very, very healing for those of us who are grievers. For me, I wear my mom's jewelry, and it just makes me feel a little closer to her all the time. As the time progresses and the years progress, we as grievers have to move through life, keep on going. We hit these things called firsts, and then not so firsts, but things like birthdays, anniversaries, death anniversaries, Mother's, Father's Day, holidays, and all you have to do on these dates, if you know someone who's lost someone, is just send a message and say, I'm thinking of you. It means the world. I just can't tell you how much impact you can have by that simple little step. Thought this was another good tip from the Insta, and it's having a remembrance of those dates. So if you know someone who loses someone close to them, actually jot that down on your calendar so you have record of that date. And you can send the I'm thinking you message when the date comes. Helping to carry the load, I think, is really common. A lot of people say, let me know how I can help, or I'm dropping off some food, things like that. This is really, really helpful, especially in those early days of busyness with funerals and planning and all that kind of stuff. So help, our survey people said, it's been awesome when people help with my kids, like just take them to a park or something, even like drop off a few new toys, something to do. Restaurant gift cards are awesome because the people can use them at their leisure when it works for them. There's no coordination, really. Same with DoorDash credits. Easy meals are really nice. Just make sure that you are not kind of creating more logistics for the people that are going through the death experience, because they're just not there for it at that point. So just take control. And I'm thinking about when my mom died a couple days later, my good friends who are here this morning, they just said, we're coming over, we're dropping a few things off. I let them in the house, and they completely cleaned my kitchen and put some food in the freezer, and they actually organized my kitchen like better than I think I've ever done before. So thank you, girls. That I'll never forget that. It's amazing. They just took control. And then finally, just be there. If you just come sit with me and hang with me and be there for me, even if I don't really want to talk, it means the world. Just having someone near that you know cares is absolutely huge. Not waiting for me to tell them what I needed because I had no idea. They just showed up. All right. Those are the helpful themes. Now for the not so helpful. Just a few things that aren't necessarily beneficial to those of us going through this experience. So, number one, we don't want you to avoid the topic. The topic being, we lost our loved one. We lost somebody. We're going through grief. Because when you avoid it, it kind of makes us feel like you forgot. And we definitely didn't forget. It's with us all the time. And also, you bringing it up doesn't necessarily make us sadder, or it doesn't bring us down or like bring us back into a certain place, because we're already there. We're already journeying there, and we're already experiencing the loss. And you bringing it up actually gives us that safe moment to talk about it for a minute because it's always in here. Let me talk about memories. Death tends to scare people away, but the grieving know it is much better to be asked about it than ignoring it. I even told my kids and my husband, like, I don't want to be the only one that ever brings grandma up. And I want you to know that it doesn't make me sadder when we talk about her. It makes me feel good. It's never too late. If you missed the funeral or the visitation, you didn't send a card right away, you didn't send a text, it's never too late to reach out. And it's never too late to make a difference in that person's life. Because we looked at the grief journey, it lasts, and you kind of have this flood of attention at the very beginning, and then it's kind of those like lingering cards that come in the mail the week or so after, the month or so after, even now 3 months after, when somebody reaches out, it's like, it feels really good. It's really nice to hear and to know that people are still remembering my mom and remembering our family. I actually felt really tacky before this all happened to me. A good friend of mine lost his daughter, and I was kind of going through things with my mom, so I didn't get to the visitation or the funeral, and I didn't get a card sent out right away, and I felt tacky about sending a card like a few weeks later. And now I know it's just not too late. Send the card, do the reach out whenever, anytime. Every single acknowledgement matters. And then there are these, what people in the survey call triggering comments. Things that just don't feel right, and they kind of irk us, cringy. This whole section right here, this whole section is kind of some things to avoid. Some things to avoid. God needed them more than we did. They had a long life. You need to move on. Everything happens for a reason. That kind of stuff, try to avoid it. A good old-fashioned, I'm so sorry for your loss, or I'm sorry you're going through this. It must be really hard. That kind of stuff hits a little bit better. And there's one comment for me that has just been especially cringy from the very beginning, ever since visitation even, people would say, "How are you? How are you?" And I feel frozen when they say that at that point. I don't feel good. I feel lost. I'm questioning everything. That's the kind of stuff that's going through my mind when they say, "How are you?" And this survey participant agreed. Literally the worst question ever for someone who's grieving. I was asked that so many times. And you just kind of feel frozen because there's just no good way to answer it. Except that if somebody genuinely comes to you and kind of phrases the question a little differently, just adding the word today, "How are you today?" That feels good. I can talk to you about how I am today. Or another question that I've had people ask me is "How's your grief? How are you doing on that?" And that's valid. That I can work with. But just be careful with "How are you?" because it's such a natural and instinctual thing to ask. We're not well sometimes. So, tough question. All right. Well, I work in an office space, and it's important to me with our team to create a really great office space and do things well for our people, have an awesome employee experience. And so I actually really was curious about grief at work. So that's the last section here. What can we do for each other at work? First of all, we can be a safe haven for someone. And by safe haven, I just mean if somebody comes back from being gone from work for a bit, for a death or a loss in their life, just reach out and say "Hey, if you ever need to talk and I'm being honest, let's go for a walk or let's grab a coffee. Maybe you've experienced a loss too." And that can be really bonding to a person who's newly grieving, other people have gone through this. So let them know that you are a safe place and that you are willing to sit down with them even in the depths of their grief. Give them space. and check in on them just a little extra than what you would normally do. The other thing that we can do is we can come alongside people on projects. So I'm not saying like don't expect them to do their work, but sometimes it's just nice to have somebody alongside you working on something, because remember all the things from before, the mind fog is real, and sometimes it's just nice to have somebody kind of like helping nudge things along for you or with you. So come alongside, work on projects together. If it can feel really good to know that you have a partner in work and somebody to bounce things around with. So, because the other thing is, I'm going to go a couple ahead here. Grief can really mess with your confidence. And it's something that I certainly have noticed, because I'm usually pretty confident in my approach to work and my decision making and my contributions. But lately, I don't know. I don't know if I'm doing a good job like I usually do. Sometimes I feel like I'm not doing enough or doing it well enough. And so when somebody tells me in the last 3 months, when somebody says like, that was awesome, you did great at that, I love that, what you did there, I agree with what you said, like it just means more now. And I need that extra encouragement to help keep me confident. And finally, at work, I really think we need to relook at bereavement or compassionate leave policies and think about, like, what is realistic here? I looked up the average for American bereavement leave, and it's 3 days. 3 days we're giving people to do what they need to do in grief. And I definitely don't think it's near enough. Looking back on this whole deal now, I'm like, okay, the whole first week is like shock and the business of death. You're working on funeral arrangements, you're dealing with family, you're doing the stuff. And then that second week, you can kind of start to level a little bit, but then there's thank you cards and follow-ups. And at some point, a person just needs to rest. A person just needs to be. So I think we could look at bereavement leave. I think, personally, I think whether we pay for 3 weeks off or we allow for 3 weeks off, I think 3 weeks is the minimum that a person should receive when it's someone very close to them in their life. All right. So Lady Bird Johnson was a really great former First Lady of the United States, and she said, and I agree with her, people must be given the opportunity to hurt out loud. So just know that the next time you run into somebody, and it's going to happen sooner than later if it hasn't already, someone you know will lose somebody, just allow them the space to go through the process and support them in many of the ways that we talked about today. I'd like to thank a few people before I hand the baton here off to Sarah, who's going to be amazing. I want to thank the 65 people who shared their stories with me in the survey. That was not only super informative for today, but it was actually very therapeutic for me and very helpful for me to see that I'm not alone. To my friends, my family, my coworkers and others, you guys have been the best supporters. Yesterday I prayed. In the afternoon I prayed that I would have the strength to move through this presentation without getting really emotional, and that I would be able to honor my mom and my family and teach you a little something about this experience. And like 5 minutes after I prayed that, I started to receive encouraging notes after encouraging notes and flowers, and I just felt the love. I felt the love. My prayers were answered. To all of you for being here and for taking on this information and helping to change the grief game in our culture. And finally, to my mom, for everything, literally everything. Thank you all very much.